The dust storm came without warning, as most terrible things do in the Arizona territory. One moment the sky was clear as blue glass. The next it turned the color of dried blood, rolling across the desert like God's own fury. Evelyn Hart pressed her handkerchief against her nose and mouth, squinting through the swirling red dust that stung her eyes like 1,000 tiny needles. The rickety stagecoach had broken an axle 20 miles back, and the driver, a sun-weathered man named Jake, who'd sworn he knew these trails like the back of his hand, had wandered off to find help 3 hours ago. Now she was alone, save for the 2 spooked horses still hitched to the useless coach. Foolish girl, she muttered to herself, her Eastern accent still crisp despite the grit coating her throat. Trading one prison for another. The wind howled louder, and she could no longer see more than a few feet in any direction. The horses whinnied in terror, pulling against their traces. She knew she should unhitch them, give them a chance to find shelter, but her hands trembled too badly to work the leather straps. That's when she heard it, the thunder of hooves cutting through the storm's roar. A rider emerged from the wall of dust like a specter, his broad shoulders wrapped in a long duster coat, his face hidden beneath the brim of a black Stetson. He dismounted in one fluid motion, moving with the easy grace of a man born to the saddle. "Ma'am, you hurt." His voice was deep, rough as the sandstone cliffs that dotted the landscape. "No, She stopped, pride warring with common sense. The stagecoach broke down. The driver left to find help. The stranger muttered something that sounded suspiciously like a curse. "Jake Morrison's coach, that fool couldn't find water if he fell in a river. Storm'll last hours. You'll die out here." He moved to the horses, his hands steady and sure as he worked the buckles. Even through the chaos of the storm, Evelyn noticed the way he gentled the frightened animals with soft words and careful touches. "My belongings," she started. "Leave them. Your life's worth more than whatever's in those bags." She bristled at his commanding tone, but grabbed only her small carpet bag, the one containing her mother's jewelry and the money she'd saved for her new life. The stranger hoisted her onto his horse, a massive black stallion that stood steady despite the wind, then swung up behind her. His arm came around her waist, solid as an iron bar, and she found herself pressed against a chest that felt like it was carved from the very rocks of the desert. He smelled of leather and sage, with something wild underneath that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. They rode hard through the storm, the man navigating by some internal compass she couldn't fathom. Time lost meaning in the swirling chaos. It might have been minutes or hours before the outline of buildings emerged from the dust. The ranch was bigger than she'd expected, a sprawling compound of adobe and timber that seemed to grow from the earth itself. The main house stood 2 stories tall, with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Even through the storm, she could see it was well maintained, prosperous. The stranger didn't slow until they reached the shelter of a large barn. He dismounted first, then reached up for her. His hands spanned her waist easily as he lifted her down, and for a moment they stood too close, her hands braced against his shoulders. "Thank you," she managed, stepping back quickly. He touched the brim of his hat, and she got her first clear look at his face. Angular features weathered by sun and wind, a strong jaw shadowed with several days' worth of stubble, and eyes the color of winter sky, pale blue, almost gray, with something haunted lurking in their depths. "Cade Callahan," he said simply. "This is my place." Evelyn Hart. She lifted her chin, trying to look dignified despite her dust-covered traveling dress and disheveled hair. "From Philadelphia." Something flickered across his face, amusement, perhaps, or skepticism. "Long way from Philadelphia, Miss Hart." "Yes, well, She stopped, unsure how to explain that she'd fled across half a continent to escape a life that would have slowly suffocated her. "I was heading to Silver Creek. I have a position there, as a school teacher." Silver Creek's another day's ride in good weather. Won't be safe to travel for days after a storm like this. He turned to lead his horse into the barn. "You'll stay here." It wasn't a question. "I couldn't impose. Wasn't offering, just stating facts." He glanced back at her, and she thought she saw the ghost of a smile tug at one corner of his mouth. "Unless you prefer camping with the scorpions and rattlesnakes." She followed him into the barn, where several ranch hands were already tending to the horses. They looked at her with open curiosity. A woman in city clothes was clearly a rare sight. "Tom," Cade called to a grizzled older man, "have Rosa prepare the blue room. We have a guest." The house, when they finally made their way through the dying wind to reach it, was even more impressive inside. Dark wood beams crossed the ceiling, and Native American rugs covered the floors. It was masculine, but not harsh, with an unexpected touch of elegance in the furniture and fixtures. A woman emerged from what Evelyn assumed was the kitchen, a handsome Mexican woman in her 50s with silver threading through her black hair. "Senor Cade, the storm we worried." She stopped when she saw Evelyn, her eyebrows rising slightly. "Rosa, this is Miss Hart. She'll be staying until the weather clears and the roads are safe." Rosa's expression softened. "Of course. Come, Senorita. You need a hot bath and clean clothes. The dust, it gets into everything." Evelyn allowed herself to be led upstairs, grateful for the woman's maternal clucking. The blue room was lovely, with a large bed covered in a quilt that looked hand-stitched, and windows that would, she imagined, offer spectacular views when not obscured by dust. Rosa returned with a simple cotton dress and undergarments. "These belong to—" She stopped abruptly, her face closing. "They should fit. I will have water brought for bathing." After Rosa left, Evelyn sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. What had she done? Trading the familiar cage of her father's house and Richard's expectations for this vast, dangerous wilderness where storms could kill and strangers could be saviors or devils with equal ease. She thought of Cade Callahan's eyes, that flash of pain quickly hidden, and Rosa's aborted sentence about the clothes. There were ghosts in this house, she realized. But then she was running from her own ghost, too. A knock interrupted her thoughts. 2 ranch hands carried in a copper tub and buckets of steaming water. She bathed quickly, washing away the dust and the fear and the bone-deep weariness of her journey. The borrowed dress fit well enough, though it was simpler than anything she'd worn since childhood blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes. When she ventured downstairs, she found Cade in what appeared to be his study, standing before a window with a glass of whiskey in his hand. He'd changed too, the trail dust replaced by a clean white shirt and dark trousers. He turned when he heard her step, and something flashed in those pale eyes before his expression shuddered again. "Rosa's preparing supper," he said. "You must be hungry." "Yes, thank you, and thank you again for—" she gestured vaguely. "Everything—" "No need for thanks. Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said quietly. "They wouldn't have—" He studied her for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling he could see straight through her carefully constructed walls to the woman underneath the one who'd climbed out a window in the dead of night rather than marry a man who viewed her as just another business acquisition. "What are you really doing out here, Miss Hart?" "I told you, I'm to be a schoolteacher in Silver Creek." With hands that have never seen a day's work, in clothes that cost more than most folks see in a year. Heat rose in her cheeks. "People change their circumstances." "That they do." He took a sip of his whiskey. "Usually when they're running from something." She lifted her chin. "Or running to something." "Maybe." He set down his glass. "Either way, you're here now. Storm won't clear for a day or two at least, and the roads will be mud after that. You're welcome to stay as long as needed." "That's very generous." "It's practical. I won't have your death on my conscience because I sent you out before it was safe." The dining room was warm with lamplight and the rich smells of Rosa's cooking beef stew with cornbread. Simple fare that tasted better than any elaborate meal she'd had in Philadelphia. Cade ate in silence mostly, though he answered her careful questions about the ranch, the territory, the challenges of raising cattle in such unforgiving land. "You've built something impressive here," she said. "My father started it. I've just continued." There was a weight to those words that suggested more than simple inheritance. She thought again of the clothes Rosa had brought, of the haunted look that sometimes crossed his features when he thought no one was watching. "Do you have much trouble with rustlers? I've heard tales." "Some. The territory's getting more civilized, but there are still those who'd rather steal than work." His jaw tightened. "I protect what's mine." The fierce certainty in his voice sent an unexpected shiver through her. This was not a man to cross, she realized. But neither was he the cold brute she'd first taken him for. There was gentleness, too, in the way he'd handled the horses, in the respect his workers showed him, in the very fact that he'd risked the storm to save a stranger. After supper, he showed her to the parlor where a fire crackled in the hearth. She expected him to retire to his study, but he surprised her by taking a chair across from hers, stretching his long legs toward the fire. "Tell me about Philadelphia," he said. So she did, carefully editing her tale. She spoke of the city itself, the bustle and energy, the new electric streetlights that were beginning to replace gas lamps. She talked about teaching, her love of books and learning, how she'd always wanted to make a difference. "And Silver Creek needs a teacher," she finished. "That it does, though it's not Philadelphia. It's rough, isolated. Most Eastern women don't last a season." "I'm not most Eastern women." A smile ghosted across his face. "No, I'm beginning to see that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire popping and the wind still moaning outside, though with less violence than before. She found herself stealing glances at him, this enigmatic man who seemed so at home in his solitude. His profile was sharp against the firelight, and she noticed his hands strong, calloused, but with a surprising grace when he moved. "I should retire," she said finally. "It's been a long day." He stood when she did, a courtesy she hadn't expected. "Breakfast is at dawn. Ranch life starts early." "I'll be ready." She was at the door when his voice stopped her. "Miss Hart, you might want to stay close to the house tomorrow. After storms like this, the wildlife gets stirred up, rattlesnakes especially." "I'll remember that." But as she climbed the stairs to her borrowed room, she wondered if the wildlife was really the most dangerous thing in this vast, untamed land. Something told her that Cade Callahan, with his haunted eyes and careful distance, might prove far more hazardous to her carefully laid plans than any rattlesnake. She stood at the window of the blue room, looking out at the darkness where the storm was finally beginning to exhaust itself. Somewhere out there was Silver Creek and the new life she'd planned. But here, now, in this house full of ghosts and a man who moved like the desert wind itself, she felt the first stirring of something she hadn't expected. Not fear, not anymore. Something far more dangerous curiosity. And beneath that, a pull she didn't want to name. She'd come west to find freedom, to escape the trap of a loveless marriage and a life lived for others' expectations. But standing there in the borrowed dress, in a stranger's house while the desert raged outside, she wondered if she'd simply traded one kind of danger for another. Time would tell. It always did. The morning sun painted the desert in shades of gold and copper, revealing a landscape transformed by the storm. Evelyn stood on the porch, mesmerized by the vastness that stretched before her, red rocks jutting from the earth like ancient sentinels, distant mountains purple against the horizon, and everywhere the strange, stark beauty of the Arizona territory. "Coffee?" She startled at Cade's voice behind her. He held out a steaming cup, his expression unreadable in the early light. "Thank you." Their fingers brushed as she took it, and she felt that unexpected jolt again. "I've never seen anything like this." "Different from Philadelphia." "Everything's different here." She took a sip, surprised by how good the coffee was. Even the air tastes different. He leaned against the porch rail, his own cup cradled in those capable hands. Takes some getting used to. The space, the silence, drives some folks half mad. And others find what they're looking for. She wanted to ask what he'd found, but something in his stance warned her off. Instead, she watched a hawk circle lazily overhead, riding invisible currents. "I should check on the damage from the storm," he said. "You're welcome to join me if you'd like. Might give you a better sense of the territory." 20 minutes later, she found herself mounted on a gentle mare named Buttercup, riding alongside Cade as they surveyed his land. The storm had left its mark fences down, a windmill damaged, debris scattered across the range. But there was something else too, something she couldn't quite name in the way Cade's jaw tightened as they crested a ridge. "What is it?" she asked. He pointed to tracks in the still damp earth. "Horses, maybe a dozen, came through during the storm. Travelers seeking shelter. Travelers don't cut fence lines." His voice had gone hard. "Stay close." They found the first dead steer a mile further on. It had been butchered hastily, only the choice cuts taken. Cade dismounted to examine the scene, his movements tense with controlled anger. "Rustlers?" she asked, though the answer was obvious. "The Morrison gang, most likely. They've been hitting ranches all along the valley." He swung back into the saddle with fluid grace. "We should head back." But as they turned, riders appeared on the horizon. 4 men, moving fast. Cade's hand went to the revolver at his hip, though he didn't draw it. "Friends of yours?" Evelyn tried to keep her voice steady. "Stay behind me. Don't speak unless I tell you to." The riders pulled up 20 feet away. The leader, a man with cold gray eyes and a scar bisecting his left cheek, smiled without warmth. "Callahan, heard you weathered the storm all right." "Morrison," Cade's voice was level, but Evelyn could feel the tension radiating from him. "You're on my land." "Just passing through. Storm drove us all over creation last night." Morrison's gaze shifted to Evelyn, lingering in a way that made her skin crawl. "Didn't know you'd taken a wife, Callahan." "The lady's business is none of yours." "Pretty thing like that. Man ought to keep her closer to home. Dangerous territory out here. All sorts of accidents can happen." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Evelyn felt Cade shift slightly, positioning himself more fully between her and the outlaws. "Like the accident that happened to my cattle." Morrison's smile widened. "Don't know nothing about that. Like I said, storm had us all turned around. Could have been anyone. Get off my land. Now. Next time I find you here, we won't be talking." "That a threat?" "It's a promise." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Morrison laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Boys, mister, Callahan here wants us gone. Guess we better accommodate him." He touched his hat mockingly in Evelyn's direction. "Ma'am." They rode off slowly, insolently, and Cade didn't relax until they were specks in the distance. "We need to get back," he said, his voice tight. They rode in silence, but Evelyn's mind raced. This was the reality of the frontier, not the romantic adventure depicted in the novels she'd read, but a place where violence lurked just beneath the surface of civility. Back at the ranch, Cade immediately called his foreman, a weathered man named Bill Hawkins. "Double the night watch," he ordered, "and send word to the other ranchers. Morrison's getting bolder." After Hawkins left, Cade turned to Evelyn. "I'm sorry you had to see that." "Are you in danger?" He shrugged. "No more than usual. Morrison's been a thorn in our side for years, but he's careful not to push too far. He knows I'll hunt him down if he does." The casual way he said it sent a chill through her. "Have you had to do that before hunt someone down?" His eyes met hers, and she saw the answer there before he spoke. "Yes." The single word carried weight. History, pain. She waited, somehow, knowing there was more. "My wife," he said finally, the words seeming to cost him. Sarah, 3 years ago. She was coming back from town when her wagon was attacked. Bandits, looking for easy prey. His hands clenched. She fought them. Sarah always was too brave for her own good, by the time I found her. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Did you find them, the men who did it? Every last one. His smile was terrible. Justice moves slow out here sometimes, so folks learn to handle things themselves. She should have been frightened by the coldness in his voice, the implication of violence. Instead, she found herself thinking of Richard, her almost fiancé, who would have sent lawyers and offered rewards, but never would have mounted a horse himself to avenge someone he loved. I'm sorry, she said simply. He looked surprised, as if he'd expected judgment or fear. It was a long time ago, but she could see it wasn't. Not really. The ghost of Sarah Callahan haunted this house, this man, as surely as if she still walked its halls. That evening, after a quiet supper, Evelyn found herself in Cade's study while he worked on ranch accounts. She'd borrowed a book from his surprisingly extensive library, Shakespeare's sonnets, leather-bound and well-read. Sarah's, he said, noticing her choice. She loved poetry, used to read aloud in the evenings. Would you like me to? She stopped, uncertain. No, then softer. But don't let me stop you from enjoying it. She read quietly while he worked. The scratch of his pen and the pop of the fire, the only sounds. It was strangely comfortable, this shared silence. She stole glances at him over the top of her book, the way lamplight caught the silver threads in his dark hair, the concentration that furrowed his brow, the careful precision of his movements. You're staring, he said without looking up. Heat flooded her cheeks. I'm sorry, I was just... It's all right. He set down his pen, leaning back in his chair. I suppose I've been doing my share of staring too. The admission hung between them, charged with possibilities neither seemed ready to acknowledge. Tell me about your husband, Cade said suddenly. The one you're running from. She went very still. What makes you think? You're wearing a ring on a chain around your neck. Engagement ring, by the look of it. Expensive, but you're traveling alone to take a teaching position in a frontier town. Doesn't take much to figure out you're running from something. Or someone. She touched the chain unconsciously. She'd kept Richard's ring not from sentiment, but as insurance, something to sell if desperate. He's not my husband. Was never going to be, if I had anything to say about it. But your family disagreed. My father saw a business opportunity. Richard saw a pretty acquisition for his collection. Nobody seemed interested in what I saw. Which was a cage, gilded, comfortable, but still a cage. She met his eyes. So I left. Simple as that. Nothing's ever that simple. She thought of the terrible scene with her father. Richard's cold fury when he discovered her plans. The threats both subtle and overt. But staying would have killed me slowly. At least this way. Whatever happens, it's my choice. He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. Choice. That's what the frontier offers. If nothing else, the freedom to succeed or fail on your own terms. Is that what you found here? I was born here. This land is in my blood. He paused. But after Sarah died, I chose to stay. Could have sold, moved somewhere civilized. Some days I wonder if I should have. Why didn't you? Because she loved it here. Every sunrise, every wildflower, every blessed difficult thing about this place. Leaving would have felt like losing her all over again. The raw honesty in his voice made her chest tight. So you stay and remember. I stay and survive. There's a difference. She wanted to argue, to tell him that the way he cared for his land and his people was more than mere survival. But a knock interrupted Rosa, bringing coffee and apple pie. The señorita, she is too thin, Rosa announced, setting down the tray with a meaningful look at Cade. In the old days, the señor would not let a guest go hungry. After she left, Cade actually smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Rosa's been trying to fatten up everyone on this ranch for 20 years. She considers it a personal failure if anyone refuses second helpings. She seems devoted to you. Her husband, Juan, has been with my family since before I was born. They're more family than employees. His expression darkened. Sarah loved Rosa like a mother. Rosa was the one who held this place together while I was out hunting her killers. Evelyn pushed the pie around her plate. Appetite gone. The violence out here, does it ever end? It's getting better. Law's coming. Slowly. The railroad brings civilization. He gave her a sharp look. Is that what sent you running violence? Not physical violence. Richard would never dirty his hands that way. She set down her fork. But there are other kinds of brutality. The kind that crushes your spirit day by day. That tells you your thoughts don't matter. Your dreams are foolish. Your only value is in what you can provide others. And he let you go. She laughed bitterly. Let me know. I suspect he's looking for me even now. But the frontier is vast, and Evelyn Hart is a common enough name. Is it your real name? She met his eyes steadily. It is now. He nodded, accepting this. They finished their dessert in companionable silence, but Evelyn noticed the way Cade's hand stayed close to his coffee cup, his fingers drumming occasionally, the only sign of whatever thoughts troubled him. I should retire, she said finally. Tomorrow I'll send word to Silver Creek about the roads, though with the damage from the storm, it might be a week before travel's safe. I don't want to impose. You're not. He stood when she did, and for a moment they were close in the lamplight. Truth is, it's been pleasant, having someone to talk to who doesn't work for me or want something from me. Just a stranger seeking shelter from a storm. No, he said quietly. Not just that, not anymore. The words followed her up the stairs, settling into her heart like seeds in fertile ground. Dangerous seeds. She knew. She'd fled one trap only to risk another, but lying in the dark of the blue room, listening to the vast silence of the desert night, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Somewhere in the house, she heard Cade's footsteps, the creak of his door. She wondered if he lay awake as she did, caught between past and future, between safety and the terrifying possibility of something more. The moon rose late, painting silver patterns on the floor. In the distance, a coyote howled lonely, defiant, wild. The sound seemed to capture everything about this untamed land, everything about the choice she'd made in coming here. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Richard wouldn't give up easily, and she doubted she'd seen the last of Morrison's gang. But tonight, in this house, haunted by love and loss, guarded by a man who wore his pain like armor, she felt something she hadn't expected. Not safe safety was an illusion out here, but free to choose, free to fail, free to maybe, possibly, discover what her heart truly wanted, even if what it wanted was as dangerous as the land itself. The attack came at dawn, 5 days after the storm. Evelyn woke to the sharp crack of gunfire and men shouting. She threw on the borrowed wrapper and rushed to the window. Below, she could see riders circling the ranch, firing at the bunkhouse where Cade's men had taken cover. The door burst open. Cade stood there, fully dressed, his gun belt strapped on. Stay away from the windows. Morrison's making his move. Let me help. You can help by staying alive. He pressed a small derringer into her hand. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or Rosa. Then he was gone, his bootfalls heavy on the stairs. Evelyn gripped the little gun, her hands trembling. Through the window, she watched Cade emerge from the house, moving with deadly purpose. He fired twice, and one of the raiders tumbled from his saddle. Rosa appeared in the doorway, carrying a rifle with practiced ease. Come, señorita. The study is safer brick walls. They barricaded themselves in Cade's study, Rosa taking position at one window while Evelyn watched the other. The older woman handled the rifle like she'd been born to it. "You've done this before," Evelyn observed. "See, many times, in the old days. This land, it does not give up its treasures easily." Rosa fired, levered another round. "But Senor Cade, he is strong. Stronger than these cobards who attack at dawn like coyotes." The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably less than 30 minutes. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The remaining raiders fled, leaving 3 of their dead behind. Evelyn was out the door before Rosa could stop her, running toward the knot of men gathered near the corral. She pushed through them, heart hammering, until she saw him. Cade knelt beside young Tommy Garrett, one of the ranch hands barely 16 years old. Blood soaked the boy's shirt, and his face was pale as parchment. "Easy, son," Cade murmured, pressing a folded cloth against the wound. "You did good, real good." Did we win, Mr. Callahan?" "We did. You helped save the ranch." The boy smiled weakly. "My ma, she'll be proud." Evelyn dropped to her knees beside them, her hands moving instinctively. "Let me see." Philadelphia society had taught her embroidery and watercolors, but her mother before consumption took her had been a doctor's daughter. She'd passed on knowledge that proper young ladies weren't supposed to have. "The bullet's still in there," she said after a quick examination. "But it missed the vital organs. He could survive if we get it out clean." Cade's eyes sharpened. "You know medicine." Enough." She looked around at the gathered men. "I need boiling water, clean cloths, whiskey, and a sharp knife. Quickly." They carried Tommy into the house, laying him on the kitchen table. Evelyn shed all thought of propriety, rolling up her sleeves and tying back her hair. "Hold him steady," she instructed Cade and Bill. "This will hurt." She worked with focused intensity, her mother's lessons flooding back. The bullet came out cleanly, and she packed the wound with whiskey-soaked cloth. Tommy had mercifully passed out from the pain. "He'll need watching," she said, wiping her bloody hands. "Fever's the danger now, but if we can keep the wound clean." "You saved his life," Cade said quietly. She met his gaze, seeing something new there. Respect, certainly, but something warmer, too. "We all saved him. I just happened to know which end of the knife to use." 2 of the ranch hands had also been wounded, though less severely. Evelyn tended them too, cleaning and bandaging with steady hands. It wasn't until after, when the immediate crisis had passed, that she realized she was covered in blood. "Rosa will get you clean clothes," Cade said. "And Miss Hart, thank you." She nodded, suddenly exhausted. But as she turned to go, she asked, "Morrison, will he come back?" "Not for a while. We bloodied his nose good, but yes, eventually. Men like him don't give up easy." In her room, Evelyn sat heavily on the bed. Her hands shook now, delayed reaction setting in. She'd come west seeking freedom, a quiet life teaching children their letters. Instead, she'd found herself in the middle of a range war, her hands covered in blood, a gun in her pocket. But strangest of all, she didn't want to leave. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "It's Cade." She opened the door to find him holding a steaming cup. "Rosa's tea says it helps with the shakes." She accepted it gratefully, inhaling the fragrant steam. "I must look a fright." "You look like someone who kept her head in a crisis and saved a boy's life." He paused in the doorway. "Where did you learn that?" "My mother. Her father was a physician in Boston. She assisted him before she married." Evelyn took a sip of tea, feeling its warmth spread through her. It wasn't considered proper knowledge for a lady, but she believed in being useful. "Useful." He leaned against the doorframe. "That what you call it, I'd say miraculous, is more accurate." She felt heat rise in her cheeks. Anyone could have— No, he interrupted. They couldn't. Most would have stood there wringing their hands while Tommy bled out. You didn't hesitate. Neither did you, or Rosa, or any of your men. We're used to violence out here. You're not. His pale eyes studied her. Or are you? There's more to Evelyn Hart than meets the eye. She set down the teacup carefully. Everyone has hidden depths. Mr. Callahan, even school teachers from Philadelphia. Cade, he said. After what we've been through today, I think you can call me Cade. Cade. The name felt intimate on her tongue. And I'm Evelyn. They stood there, the space between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Then voices called from downstairs, something about the sheriff arriving, and the moment broke. The sheriff was a grizzled man named Watson, who seemed more interested in the coffee Rosa provided than in pursuing justice. He took statements, examined the dead raiders, and promised to look into it with a distinct lack of enthusiasm. Morrison's got alibis, no doubt, he told Cade privately, though Evelyn overhead. His whole gang will swear they were playing cards in Tucson. You know how it is. I know you're not doing your job, Cade said flatly. Watson's face reddened. Now see here, Callahan, I've got one deputy in a territory bigger than some states. You want better law? Talk to the governor about funding. After the sheriff left, Cade's mood was dark. Evelyn found him on the porch, staring out at the desert with clenched fists. He's not wrong, she said softly. One sheriff can't police all this land. Doesn't mean he shouldn't try. He glanced at her. You should be resting. So should you. Can't. Too much to do. Fences to repair. Cattle to move. Men to bury. The raiders, even they deserve a grave. We're not animals. She moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. You're a good man, Cade Callahan. He laughed bitterly. Tell that to the men I've killed. Defending your land, your people, doesn't make them any less dead. She touched his arm lightly. No, but it makes you someone who protects what matters. That's rare. He looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then up at her face. Something shifted in his expression, the hardness softening. Evelyn. Senor Queda, Juan called from the barn. We found more cut fence to the north. The moment shattered. Cade stepped back, the walls coming up again. I have to go. Of course. But he paused before leaving. Stay close to the house, please. Morrison might try something while we're distracted with repairs. She spent the afternoon with Tommy, monitoring his fever, changing his bandages. The boy was tough, fighting through the pain with gritted teeth. He reminded her of the street children in Philadelphia old before their time, hardened by necessity. You're not from here, Tommy said during a lucid moment. No, from back east. Why do you come? It's dangerous for ladies out here. She smoothed his blanket. Everywhere's dangerous in different ways. At least here. You can see the threats coming. Mr. Callahan, he's sweet on you. Heat flooded her cheeks. You're feverish. Rest now. But Tommy grinned weakly. I ain't that feverish. Way he looks at you when he thinks nobody's watching. Haven't seen him look at anybody like that since Miss Sarah died. That evening, with the immediate repairs done and the ranch settling into uneasy quiet, Evelyn found herself helping Rosa prepare supper. The older woman worked in comfortable silence for a while before speaking. You did well today, señorita. Very well. I did what was necessary. Sigh. But not everyone can do what is necessary when blood is spilling. Rosa kneaded bread dough with strong hands. The señor. He noticed. Rosa. I do not speak out of turn, but I have known Senor Cade since he was a boy. These 3 years since Miss Sarah. He has been like the desert in drought. Today, I saw rain in his eyes. Evelyn focused on chopping vegetables, unsure how to respond. He will fight it. Rosa continued. He believes his heart died with her, but hearts, they are stronger than we know. They can grow back like the grass after fire. At dinner, Cade was distracted, barely eating. The other ranch hands were subdued too, the morning's violence casting a shadow over the meal. But there was something else, a sense of unity, of having weathered the storm together. Tommy's fever broke, Evelyn reported. He should recover fully. Relief flickered across Cade's face. Thanks to you. Thanks to all of us. Bill Hawkins raised his coffee cup. To Miss Evelyn, best damn pardon. Ma'am, best field doctor we've ever had. The others joined the toast, and Evelyn felt something she hadn't experienced since her mother died belonging. Later, as she helped clear dishes, her sleeve caught on a nail, tearing the fabric and scratching her arm. She gasped at the sharp pain. Cade was beside her instantly. Let me see. His hands were gentle as he examined the wound. Not deep, but it should be cleaned. He led her to his study, retrieving a medical kit from his desk. Seems I'm returning the favor. She sat still as he cleaned the scratch with whiskey, trying not to react to his nearness. The careful way he held her arm. His touch was clinical, proper, but her skin seemed to burn where his fingers grazed. There, he began wrapping a light bandage. Should heal clean. Thank you. He didn't release her arm immediately. His thumb brushed the inside of her wrist. Whether by accident or design, she couldn't tell. Her pulse jumped, and she knew he must feel it. Evelyn, his voice was rough. She looked up at him, seeing the war in his eyes, desire fighting with loyalty to a ghost. Without thinking, she reached up to touch his face, her fingers light against his cheek. She wouldn't want you to stop living, she whispered. He closed his eyes, leaning almost imperceptibly into her touch. You don't know that. I know she loved you. Love doesn't seek to imprison. His hand covered hers, pressing it against his face. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her. Her lips parted in anticipation. Then he pulled away, standing abruptly. You should rest. It's been a long day. The dismissal stung, but she rose with dignity. Of course. Good night, Cade. Good night. She was at the door when she heard him whisper, so soft she might have imagined it, touch me there, where it stopped hurting. She paused but didn't turn. Some things were too fragile to acknowledge in the light. In her room, she touched her wrist where his thumb had rested, feeling the echo of that electric contact. Tomorrow she would need to think about Silver Creek, about the life she'd planned. But tonight, with the desert wind singing through the windows and the memory of pale blue eyes dark with suppressed longing, she let herself want what she couldn't have. A man still married to a ghost. A home in a land that demanded blood for every blessing. A love that might be worth the price. The rumors reached Silver Creek before Evelyn did. 2 weeks had passed since the raid. Tommy had recovered enough to return to light duties, and the ranch had settled into an uneasy peace. Cade had finally declared the road safe for travel, though his reluctance was obvious. I'll escort you to town, he said that morning, checking his rifle with unnecessary care. Make sure you get there safely. They rode in companionable silence through the morning heat. But Evelyn noticed the way his jaw tightened as Silver Creek came into view. The town sprawled along a dry riverbed, all wooden buildings and dusty streets, with the Silver Dollar Saloon dominating the main thoroughfare. Their arrival caused a stir. Curtains twitched, conversations halted, and eyes followed their progress down the street. Evelyn kept her chin high, but she could feel the weight of speculation. At the schoolhouse, a modest building that had seen better days, they were met by Mrs. Prudence Blackwood, head of the town's ladies' auxiliary and self-appointed guardian of moral virtue. She was a thin woman with sharp features and sharper eyes. Miss Hart, I presume... Her gaze flicked between Evelyn and Cade, full of judgment. We expected you 2 weeks ago. I was delayed by the storm, Evelyn replied evenly. Mr. Callahan was kind enough to provide shelter. Indeed. The word dripped disapproval. How fortunate. Cade's expression hardened. Miss Hart saved one of my ranch hands' lives. Prudence. She's shown more Christian charity in 2 weeks than you've managed in 20 years. Mrs. Blackwood's face flushed. Well, I never... No, Cade said flatly. You never do. Good day. He touched his hat to Evelyn. I'll help bring your belongings to the boarding house. But at Mrs. Elmira's boarding house for respectable ladies, they encountered another obstacle. Mrs. Elmira, a nervous woman who kept glancing at Mrs. Blackwood, wrung her hands. I'm so sorry, Miss Hart, but the room I promised, it's no longer available. I see. Evelyn kept her voice steady despite the sinking feeling in her stomach. Perhaps another room. All full, I'm afraid. Such a busy time of year. It was a lie, transparent as glass. Evelyn felt Cade tense beside her. This is ridiculous, he began, but she touched his arm lightly. It's all right. I'm sure there are other arrangements. The Garrett family. A new voice interrupted. They turned to see Reverend Douglas, a man with kind eyes and prematurely white hair. They have a spare room since their eldest married. Good Christian folk. I'm sure they'd welcome a teacher who saved their youngest son's life. Mrs. Blackwood's mouth pinched like she'd bitten a lemon. The story had already spread, then twisted. No doubt, but impossible to deny entirely. That's very kind, Evelyn said warmly. I'd be honored to stay with Tommy's family. The Garrett homestead was modest but clean. On the outskirts of town, Mrs. Martha Garrett, a plump woman with work-worn hands, embraced Evelyn with tears in her eyes. You saved our Tommy. Anything we have is yours. I only helped. Don't you be modest now. Martha glanced at Cade with knowing eyes. Mr. Callahan told us everything when he sent word about Tommy. You're an angel. That's what you are. Cade helped carry her belongings inside, then lingered on the porch, hat in his hands. You'll be all right here, he said. The Garretts are good people, unlike some others in town. His smile was wry. Every place has its Prudence Blackwoods. Don't let her poison get to you. I've dealt with worse. She thought of Richard's cold fury, her father's cutting words. Small-minded people don't frighten me. No, he said softly. I don't believe they do. They stood there, neither quite ready to say goodbye. The afternoon sun slanted across the porch, painting everything golden. You'll come to town sometimes, she asked. For supplies. Saturdays, usually. He replaced his hat, businesslike again. If you need anything before then, I'll be fine. But as she watched him ride away, she wondered if that were true. Already she missed the ranch, the vast skies, the purposeful rhythm of life there, and most of all, he's a good man, Martha said from behind her. Loneliest soul in the territory since his Sarah passed, but good to his core. People keep mentioning her. Martha's expression softened. Sarah Callahan was special, pretty as a sunrise, brave as any man, kind to everyone. When she died, well, it near broke him. He loved her something fierce. How did they meet? She was the old Reverend's daughter, come from back east to help with his ministry. Cade took one look at her and was lost. Martha smiled at the memory. Courted her proper for 6 months, even started attending church regular. Nobody thought she'd say yes. What did a refined lady want with a rancher? But she saw past the rough edges to the man beneath. Evelyn absorbed this, picturing a younger Cade, unburdened by grief, pursuing his love with single-minded determination. Must be strange for folks. Martha continued carefully. Seeing him pay attention to another woman. He was simply being kind. Honey, Cade Callahan don't escort just anybody to town. and he sure don't face down Prudence Blackwood for every stray schoolteacher. That evening, Evelyn attended a welcome gathering at the church. The reception was mixed, some genuinely warm, others coolly polite. She met the children she'd be teaching, a ragtag group ranging from 6 to 16, and felt her first real spark of enthusiasm since arriving. But the whispers followed her. Living at the Callahan Ranch, unchaperoned, must have been quite cozy. Judge Morrison, no relation to the outlaw, pulled her aside. A distinguished man with silver hair. He seemed genuinely concerned. "Miss Hart, a word of advice. You're new here, so perhaps you don't understand how careful a lady must be with her reputation. Mr. Callahan is respected, yes, but he's also... Well, there are stories about what he did after his wife's death, the violence of it. He sought justice for a murdered woman, his wife. Some would say he went beyond justice. The bodies, what was left of them." The judge shuddered delicately. "I merely suggest you maintain appropriate distance for your own standing in the community." Evelyn met his gaze squarely. "Thank you for your concern, Judge, but I'll choose my own associations based on character, not gossip." His expression cooled. "As you wish, but don't say you weren't warned." The school week began with 22 students and a building that leaked when it rained, which, in Arizona, was mercifully rare. Evelyn threw herself into teaching, grateful for the distraction from thoughts of a certain rancher. Her students were eager, if undisciplined, hungry for knowledge in a way her Philadelphia pupils had never been. She started with basics, but quickly realized many were capable of much more. Young Annie Patterson, 12 years old, devoured every book Evelyn could find. Miguel Santos showed a gift for mathematics that astounded her. Even the older boys, initially skeptical of a female teacher, grudgingly admitted she weren't too bad for a lady. But the whispers in town continued. Mrs. Blackwood made sure of that. Of course, one must wonder about a woman who'd abandoned her family back east, she said loudly at the general store while Evelyn was within earshot. And to live with a man, unchaperoned, for 2 entire weeks. Well, I'm sure she had her reasons. Evelyn continued selecting her purchases, refusing to give the woman the satisfaction of a response. But inside, anger burned. She'd fled one cage only to find another made of different bars, perhaps, but just as confining. Saturday arrived with its usual bustle. Evelyn was helping Annie pick out a new reader at the general store when she heard the familiar deep voice. "Johnson, I need ammunition. The .44 caliber." Her pulse quickened. She hadn't seen Cade since he'd left her at the Garretts. She turned, their eyes meeting across the crowded store. He touched his hat. "Miss Hart." "Mr. Callahan." The formal address felt wrong after everything they'd shared, but the watching eyes demanded propriety. "How's the teaching?" "Very well. The children are eager to learn." "Good. That's good." The stilted conversation was painful. Annie looked between them with 2 knowing eyes for a 12-year-old. "Mr. Johnson cleared his throat. That'll be $6, Callahan." As Cade paid Mrs., Blackwood sailed over like a frigate into battle. "Oh, Mr. Callahan. How fortuitous. I was just telling Mrs. Mayer that we really must do something about the moral standards in our town. Why? The influence on our children." Cade's eyes went cold. "You're right. Prudence. The gossip and judgment some folks spread is a terrible influence. Children might grow up thinking Christian charity means tearing down anyone different." "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." "I'm sure you do." He collected his ammunition. "Good day, ladies. Miss Hart." After he left, Mrs. Blackwood turned her glare on Evelyn. "That man is dangerous. You'd do well to remember it." "The only danger I see," Evelyn replied calmly, "is from those who confuse cruelty with righteousness." She left with Annie, but not before hearing Mrs. Blackwood's outraged splutter. You told her good, Miss Hart, Annie said admiringly. Ma says Mrs. Blackwood's got a tongue sharp enough to skin a buffalo. A lady doesn't gossip, Annie? No, ma'am. But is it gossip if it's true? That evening, Evelyn sat on the garret's porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of fire. She'd made her stand, but she knew the battle was far from over. In a small town, reputation was currency, and hers was already tainted by association. A rider approached Cade. She realized with a leap of her heart. He dismounted at the gate, seeming uncertain. Evening, he said. Thought I'd check how you're settling in. Would you like to come up, Mrs. Garrett made lemonade. He climbed the steps slowly, settling into the chair beside hers. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the stars emerge. I'm sorry, he said finally. About town, about Prudence. You wouldn't face this if not for staying at my ranch. I wouldn't be alive if not for staying at your ranch. The storm would have killed me. Maybe, but your reputation wouldn't be in question. She turned to face him. My reputation. Let me tell you about reputation. Mr. Callahan, in Philadelphia. I had a sterling reputation, daughter of a prominent family, engaged to a wealthy man, following all the rules, and I was dying inside, piece by piece. Evelyn, here, I may be the subject of gossip, but I wake each morning with purpose. I teach children who want to learn. I make my own choices. If that costs me the approval of hypocrites like Prudence Blackwood, it's a price I'll gladly pay. He studied her in the fading light. You're stronger than you look. I've had to be. Your man Richard, he give up looking. The question she'd been dreading. I don't know. Probably not. He doesn't like losing possessions. That how he saw you a possession? Among other things, an ornament, a business arrangement, a means to an heir. She laughed bitterly. Everything but a person. Cade's jaw tightened. If he comes here, he won't. Richard prefers to send others to do his dirty work. Besides, Evelyn Hart from Philadelphia ceased to exist when I bought that stagecoach ticket. And who exists now? She met his gaze steadily. A woman who saves lives and teaches children and doesn't give a damn what the gossips say. Something flared in his eyes, admiration, desire, recognition, dangerous attitude for a schoolteacher. Good thing I'm a dangerous woman. He smiled then, the rare, genuine smile that transformed his weathered features. Yes, I'm beginning to see that. Martha appeared with lemonade and cookies, settling her bulk into a third chair with obvious intent to chaperone. But her presence was comfortable rather than intrusive. And they talked of small things, the ranch, the school, Tommy's continued recovery. When Cade finally rose to leave, Martha went inside on a transparent errand. The offer stands, he said quietly. You need anything, any trouble, you send word. Cade. She hesitated, then forged ahead. The judge warned me about you, about what you did to Sarah's killers. His face went still. Did he now? I don't care. She stood, moving closer. I mean, I care that you carry that weight, but it doesn't change it doesn't change anything. He reached out, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. You should care, should be frightened. I'm not a gentleman. Evelyn, not anymore. I'm not a gentlewoman, not anymore. For a moment, they stood suspended, the air between them electric with possibility. Then Cade stepped back, the walls slamming back into place. Good night, Miss Hart. Good night, Mr. Callahan. But as she watched him ride away, she thought she heard him murmur something. It might have been the wind, or her imagination, but it sounded like, God help me, I'm lost. She touched her cheek where his fingers had grazed, and whispered to the empty night, So am I. The stranger arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, dust-covered and dangerous, riding a horse too fine for an ordinary drifter. Evelyn was dismissing her students when Annie Patterson burst back through the door. "Miss Hart, there's a fancy man at the hotel asking about a lady teacher from Philadelphia." Ice formed in Evelyn's stomach. She forced herself to remain calm. "Thank you, Annie. Run along home now." But her hands shook as she locked the schoolhouse. 3 months in Silver Creek had given her a false sense of security. She should have known Richard wouldn't give up so easily. The walk to the Garrett house seemed endless. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every stranger's glance felt weighted with meaning. She nearly collapsed with relief when she reached the porch. "Child." "What's wrong?" Martha took one look at her face and ushered her inside. "You're white as fresh linen." "Someone's asking about me. A man from back east." Martha's expression hardened. "The one you were running from." Evelyn nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. "Tom," Martha called to her husband, "ride out to the Callahan Ranch. Tell Mr. Cade we need him. Quick now." "No," Evelyn protested. "I can't involve him." "Hush now. That man's been looking for an excuse to come to town more regular anyway." Martha guided her to a chair. "You just sit tight. We take care of our own here." An hour later, hoofbeats announced Cade's arrival. He strode through the door like controlled thunder, still covered in trail dust, his pale eyes blazing. "Where is he?" "The hotel," Martha supplied. Tom saw him there, asking questions about any new women in town. Well-dressed fellow. Got 2 rough-looking men with him. Cade knelt beside Evelyn's chair, his large hands engulfing hers. "Evelyn, look at me." She raised her eyes to his, drawing strength from the fierce protectiveness she saw there. "Is it him, Richard?" "I don't know. Maybe. Or someone he sent." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm sorry. I've brought trouble to your door." "Stop." His grip tightened. "You've brought nothing but good to this place. If he wants to find you, he'll have to go through me." "Cade, you don't understand. Richard has money, influence. He could destroy." "Let him try." He stood, checking the revolver at his hip. "Tom, I want you to take the women to the church. Reverend Douglas will keep them safe. Then gather Bill and some of the boys. Time to meet this Eastern gentleman." "I'm not hiding," Evelyn said, standing as well. "This is my fight." "Our fight," Cade corrected. "But you'll be safer at the church until we know what we're dealing with." They locked eyes, wills clashing. "Finally," she nodded. "Be careful." Something softened in his expression. "Always am." From the church's bell tower, Evelyn watched Cade stride down Main Street flanked by 6 armed ranch hands. Even from a distance, she could see the deadly grace in his movements, the way other men stepped aside. "Never seen Mr. Callahan riled like this?" Annie whispered beside her. Several of the school children had gathered, drawn by the excitement. "Ma says he ain't been to town this much since Miss Sarah's funeral." The confrontation happened outside the hotel. Evelyn couldn't hear the words, but she saw Cade's hand hover near his gun as he faced a man in a gray suit. Not Richard, this man was taller, leaner, with the look of a hired hunter. Papers were produced, examined. The conversation grew heated. One of the stranger's companions reached for his weapon, but Bill Hawkins had his rifle trained on him before he could clear leather. Then Cade did something unexpected. He laughed a harsh, carrying sound and turned his back on the strangers. Walking away, the message was clear. "You're not worth my time." The man in gray called after him, gesturing angrily, but Cade kept walking. "Show's over. Children," Reverend Douglas said firmly. "Back downstairs, all of you." But Evelyn remained, watching as the strangers retreated into the hotel. Cade headed straight for the church, and she met him at the door. "Silas Kane," he said without preamble. "Says he's a business associate of Richard Pemberton from Philadelphia. Has legal papers claiming you're a thief, stole jewelry and money from your fiancé." Her legs nearly gave out.
That's a lie. The jewelry was my mother's. And the money—
I know. Cade steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Told him as much. Also told him Silver Creek don't much care for Eastern lawyers trying to railroad our school teacher. He won't give up. Richard sent him to— To what drag you back in chains? Cade's eyes flashed. This is Arizona territory, not Philadelphia. We have our own laws here. But if he has legal documents? Forgeries, most like. Sheriff Watson may be lazy, but he's not corrupt. Without real proof and a territorial warrant, Kane can't do anything official. And unofficially, Cade's smile was all teeth. Unofficially, he'll find this town a very unhealthy place to cause trouble. That evening, a council of war convened in the Garrett parlor, along with Cade, Reverend Douglas, and Judge Morrison. Several other prominent townspeople gathered, even Mrs. Blackwood appeared, her disapproval of Evelyn temporarily set aside in the face of an outside threat. The man's taken rooms for a week, Judge Morrison reported, asking questions about Miss Hart's character, her associations, offering money for information. Let him ask, Tom Garrett said firmly. Won't hear nothing bad about the woman who saved my boy's life. He's also asking about you, Callahan, the judge continued. Your relationship with Miss Hart, looking for leverage.
There's no improper relationship,
Evelyn said quickly. Several people exchanged knowing looks, but no one contradicted her. The question, Reverend Douglas said, is how we handle this. The man hasn't broken any laws yet. Yet, Cade emphasized. But men like Kane don't come this far to leave empty-handed. You think he'll try something? I know he will. Question is when and how. Mrs. Blackwood surprised everyone by speaking up. Whatever our differences may be, Miss Hart is our teacher. This town protects its own. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected support. Plans were made. The men would take turns watching the hotel. Evelyn would not go anywhere alone. The sheriff would be pressured to investigate Kane's credentials. After the others left, Cade lingered. Martha made herself scarce with obvious intent. This is my fault, Evelyn said quietly. I should leave. Lead them away from here. Running again. Cade moved closer. That your answer to everything. Sometimes running is the only choice. Not anymore. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly gentle. You've got people here now, friends, students who need you. A pause. You've got me. Her breath caught. Cade. I know I've been keeping distance, trying to be noble or some such foolishness, but seeing that vulture come for you. His hand cupped her cheek. I can't lose you, Evelyn, not to them, not to anyone. I'm not yours to lose. Aren't you? His thumb traced her cheekbone. Tell me you don't feel it, this thing between us. She closed her eyes. Feeling it and acting on it are different things. Why? Because you're still in love with your wife. Because I'm trouble you don't need. Because— He silenced her with a kiss. It was nothing like the careful, passionless pecks Richard had bestowed. This was fire and need, and 3 months of denied wanting. She gripped his shoulders, drowning in the sensation, tasting coffee and determination, and something wild that called to everything untamed in her own heart. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw her own wonder reflected in his eyes. Evelyn, he said roughly, Footsteps on the porch sent them springing apart. Tom Garrett entered, looking grim. Kane's on the move. Just left the hotel with his men. Cade was instantly alert. Which direction? North, toward the Dalton spread. Dalton owes money all over town. Kane's either buying information or hiring guns. Cade grabbed his hat. Double the watch on the house. I'll see what our eastern friend is planning. Be careful, Evelyn said. He paused at the door, looking back. We're not done talking. After he left, she touched her lips, still feeling the burn of his kiss. Everything had just become infinitely more complicated. The next morning brought new troubles. 3 families pulled their children from school, citing concerns about their teachers' associations. Mrs. Blackwood had apparently reconsidered her support in the cold light of day. Evelyn faced her depleted classroom with forced cheer, but inside she seethed. How dare they punish children for adult prejudices? At lunch, Annie brought disturbing news. Pa saw Mr. Kane talking to Jake Morrison outside town, gave him a big envelope. Morrison, the outlaw who'd attacked Cade's ranch, if Kane was allying with him. Annie, I need you to run to the sheriff's office. Tell him what your father saw. But before Annie could leave, the door burst open. Silas Kane entered, flanked by his 2 thugs. Miss Hart, or should I say, Miss Pemberton. My name is Hart, and you're disrupting my classroom. Kane smiled, a cold expression that reminded her painfully of Richard. These children should know their teacher is a thief and a woman of loose morals. Get out. She stepped between him and her students. Now. Such fire. Richard said you developed a backbone. He's looking forward to breaking it. One of the children, Miguel, slipped out the back door. Good boy. Get help. Mr. Kane, you have no authority here. Leave, or I'll... You'll what? He moved closer, his men spreading out to flank her. Scream run. Who'll help you? The townspeople who already whisper about you. The rancher you're spreading your legs for. Red hazed her vision. How dare you? So Richard wants you back. You can come quietly, or... He shrugged. Arizona's dangerous. Accidents happen. Yes? A familiar voice said from the doorway. They do. Cade stood there, deceptively relaxed, hand resting on his gun. Behind him, Bill and several others blocked the exit. This is a private conversation. Callahan. Nothing's private when you threaten our school teacher in front of children. Cade's eyes were winter ice. Boys, escort Mr. Kane and his friends out. They're no longer welcome in Silver Creek. Kane's face flushed. You can't... I will. And if you come near Miss Hart again, you'll learn why sensible men avoid crossing me. The threat hung heavy in the air. Kane's men looked nervous, aware they were outnumbered and facing men who knew violence intimately. This isn't over, Kane snarled. Richard Pemberton has resources you can't imagine. Legal means... Tell Pemberton if he wants Miss Hart. He can come himself. Face me man to man. Otherwise, forget she exists. Cade stepped aside. Now get out before I forget I'm civilized. After they left, Cade turned to the children. School's dismissed early today. Annie, take everyone to the church. Tell Reverend Douglas what happened. When they were alone, Evelyn sank into her chair, shaking. He's right. Richard won't stop. He'll use the law, money, whatever it takes. Let him come. Cade knelt beside her, taking her hands. Evelyn, look at me. She met his gaze, seeing determination that matched her own. I've already sent word to a lawyer friend in Tucson. We'll fight any legal challenge. And if Pemberton wants to try other means... His smile was sharp. Well, I've dealt with worse than soft Eastern businessmen. Why, she whispered. Why risk so much for me? You know why. Say it. He brought her hands to his lips. Because somewhere between you saving Tommy's life and standing up to Prudence Blackwood, I fell in love with you. Because you make me want things I thought died with Sarah. Because losing you would finish what her death started. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Cade, marry me. The words hung between them, momentous and terrifying. What? Marry me. Let them try to take my wife. See how far they get. You can't. That's not your proposing out of protection. Not. I'm proposing because I love you. Protection's just a benefit. He cupped her face. But if you need time... She silenced him with a kiss. pouring all her fear and love and desperate hope into it.
Yes,
She breathed against his lips.
yes, I'll marry you.
He crushed her against him, and for a moment the world consisted only of his arms, his warmth, the steady beat of his heart. Then reality intruded. They had plans to make, battles to fight. Richard wouldn't accept this easily. Violence was coming. But standing in the empty schoolhouse, held by a man who'd choose her over safety, Evelyn felt ready for whatever came next. She'd found something worth fighting for. The attack came 3 nights later, under a blood moon that turned the desert crimson. Evelyn woke to the acrid smell of smoke and the thunder of hooves from her window at the Garrett house. She could see flames licking the sky in the direction of Cade's ranch.
Dear God,
Martha gasped, clutching her wrapper.
they're burning him out.
Without thinking, Evelyn threw on her riding clothes. I have to go. Child. No, that's what they want. But Evelyn was already strapping on the gun belt Cade had given her. Get Tom. Send riders to town for help. And Martha, if I don't come back. Don't talk like that. Martha gripped her shoulders. You come back. You hear both of you. Evelyn rode hard through the darkness, her heart pounding in rhythm with her mare's hooves. The smell of smoke grew stronger, mixed with something else, gunpowder. The night crackled with gunfire. She crested the final ridge and gasped. The barn was fully engulfed, flames reaching toward the star-scattered sky. Dark figures on horseback circled the ranch house, firing at the windows where muzzle flashes showed Cade's men returning fire. She counted at least 15 attackers, too many for the handful of ranch hands to hold off for long. A rider broke from the group, heading toward the well. Even in the chaos, she recognized the lean figure of Silas Kane. He carried a torch, clearly intending to poison the water supply or worse. Without conscious thought, Evelyn spurred her horse forward, drawing her revolver. Her first shot went wide, but it got Kane's attention. He wheeled his mount, raising his own weapon. Time slowed. She saw the muzzle flash, felt the bullet whisper past her ear. Her second shot was better, catching him in the shoulder. He cursed and dropped the torch, clutching at the wound. "The woman!" someone shouted. "Get her!" 2 riders broke off to pursue her. She bent low over her horse's neck, racing for the cover of the rock formations near the house. Bullets whined overhead like angry hornets. She made it to the rocks, sliding from the saddle and taking cover. Her hands shook as she reloaded, but her mind was crystal clear. She had 6 shots and 2 men hunting her. The first rider came around the rocks fast. Too confident, she fired twice, seeing him topple backward from his horse. The second man was smarter, dismounting and approaching on foot. "Come on out, schoolteacher," he called. "Make this easy on yourself." She pressed against the cold stone, calculating angles. A boot scraped on gravel too close. She spun around the rock face and found herself face to face with Jake Morrison himself. His eyes widened in surprise. Hers narrowed in determination. They fired simultaneously. Pain exploded through her left arm as his bullet grazed her. But her aim was true. Morrison staggered back, a red stain spreading across his chest. He looked down at it in disbelief, then up at her. "Damn, schoolteacher," he wheezed, and collapsed. Evelyn. She turned to see Cade racing toward her, his face a mask of fear and fury. Behind him, the tide of battle was turning. Town riders had arrived, led by Tom Garrett and Bill Hawkins. The remaining outlaws were fleeing into the night. Cade reached her in 3 strides, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. When he found the blood on her arm, his expression turned murderous. "It's just a graze," she said quickly. "Cade, I'm fine." He silenced her with a desperate kiss, then pulled back to examine her arm properly. "What the hell were you thinking? Riding into this—" "I was thinking the man I love was in danger." She touched his face, leaving a streak of blood on his cheek. "I couldn't just hide and wait." "Stubborn woman," but his voice was rough with emotion. Beautiful, brave, stubborn woman. The barn collapsed in a shower of sparks, drawing their attention back to the devastation. Half the ranch hands were wounded, though none fatally. The house had taken damage but stood firm, and scattered around the grounds lay the bodies of 8 outlaws, including Jake Morrison. Sheriff Watson arrived with the dawn, looking more energetic than anyone had seen him in years. The attempted murder of prominent citizens had finally stirred him to action. "Kane's in custody," he reported. "Shot and babbling about some Eastern businessman who hired him. We'll get the full story." "The barn's gone," Bill reported to Cade. "Lost maybe 20 head of cattle, but we saved most of the stock. The well's clear they didn't get to it in time." Cade nodded, his arm tight around Evelyn's waist. She leaned into him, exhausted, but alive. "Could have been worse," Tom Garrett said. "Could have lost people instead of property." "We were lucky," Cade agreed. "This time." The cleanup took days. The whole town pitched in, even those who'd been cool toward Evelyn before. Facing outside threats had a way of uniting people. Mrs. Blackwood herself brought food and medical supplies. "I owe you an apology, Miss Hart," she said stiffly. "Your actions during the attack, well, I was wrong about you." "We all make mistakes," Evelyn replied graciously, though part of her wanted to point out that it shouldn't have taken bloodshed to prove her character. The story that emerged from Kane's confession was chilling. Richard hadn't just hired him to retrieve Evelyn, he'd paid for her to be eliminated if she wouldn't come willingly. The attack on the ranch was meant to kill Cade and anyone protecting her. Attempted murder, conspiracy, destruction of property. Judge Morrison listed. Kane will hang. As for this Pemberton fellow, I'll personally write the territorial marshal. Interstate conspiracy to commit murder, he'll face federal charges. But Evelyn knew Richard too well. He had money, lawyers, connections. The law might inconvenience him, but would it stop him? 3 days after the attack, she stood with Cade surveying the remains of the barn. Plans for rebuilding were already underway, but the scars would take time to fade. "I brought this to your door," she said quietly. "Your home, your people." "Our home," he corrected. "Our people. And they chose to stand and fight, just like you did. Sarah would have done the same." The name hung between them, no longer painful but acknowledged. He was quiet for a long moment. "She would have," he agreed finally. "She would have liked you, I think. Your courage, your refusal to be cowed." He turned to face her fully. "I'll always love her memory, Evelyn. But you're not competing with a ghost. You're my future, if you'll have me. Battle scars and all." She lifted their joined hands, studying the contrast, his weathered and powerful, hers smaller but no less strong. Both bore new wounds from the fight. "I've been thinking," she said, "about the school." His expression grew wary. "You're not leaving." "Never, but the children need more than what I can teach in that little building. They need to learn practical things too, ranching, business, survival, skills for life out here." "What are you proposing?" "A real school, here on the ranch. Boarding students from across the territory. You have the land, I have the knowledge. We could build something important. Cade, something lasting." He stared at her, then laughed a full, rich sound she'd rarely heard. "Most women would want to leave after what happened. You want to expand." "I'm not most women." "No," he agreed, pulling her close. "You're definitely not." They were married a week later in a simple ceremony at the church. Half the territory seemed to attend, curious about the woman who'd faced down outlaws and won the heart of the untouchable Cade Callahan. Evelyn wore Sarah's wedding dress. Rosa had offered it with tears in her eyes, saying it was what the first Mrs. Callahan would have wanted. The gesture healed something in everyone. As Reverend Douglas pronounced them husband and wife, Evelyn caught sight of movement outside the church window. A lone rider sat on the ridge, watching, even at that distance. She recognized the set of those shoulders, the arrogant tilt of that head.
Richard, he'd come himself after all.
Cade followed her gaze, his hand moving instinctively to where his gun would normally rest. But this was his wedding day, and he wore no weapons in church. The rider raised one hand in farewell or threat. She couldn't tell. Then he turned and disappeared over the ridge.
He's leaving,
she whispered. For now, Cade agreed grimly. But we'll be ready if he comes back. As they walked down the aisle as husband and wife, accepting congratulations and dodging rice, Evelyn felt a mix of joy and apprehension. They'd won this battle, but the war might not be over. That evening, as wedding guests celebrated at the ranch, the house strung with lanterns to hide the bullet holes she found a moment alone with her new husband. No regrets, she asked. He spun her in a slow dance, there under the stars where the barn used to stand. Only one. Her heart stuttered.
What?
That it took me so long to see what was right in front of me. He dipped his head to whisper in her ear. But I plan to make up for lost time. Starting tonight. Heat flooded her cheeks, but she met his eyes boldly. Promises, promises. Mr. Callahan. Facts, Mrs. Callahan. Simple facts. As he led her inside, away from the celebration and toward their new life together, Evelyn allowed herself a moment of pure happiness. She'd found her place, her purpose, her partner. But in the back of her mind, she remembered that lone rider on the ridge. Richard didn't accept defeat easily. He'd be back, one way or another. When he came, they'd be ready, together. The desert wind carried the sounds of celebration across the valley, mixing with coyote songs and the endless whisper of the sand. It was a hard land, unforgiving and violent. But it was theirs, and they would defend it with everything they had. The morning sun painted their bedroom in soft gold, a gentle counterpoint to the violence of recent days. Evelyn woke slowly, savoring the unfamiliar weight of Cade's arm across her waist, the steady rhythm of his breathing against her neck. 3 weeks of marriage had brought a peace she'd never known existed. Not just the physical intimacy, though, that had been a revelation, but the quiet moments. Coffee at dawn. Shared silences. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. You're thinking too loud, he murmured against her skin. How do you know I'm thinking? You get this little line right here. He kissed the spot between her eyebrows. What's troubling you? She turned in his arms to face him.
It's been too quiet. Richard wouldn't just give up.
Maybe seeing you protected changed his mind. You don't know him like I do. He's planning something. She traced the new scar on his shoulder. A souvenir from the raid. I couldn't bear it if... Hey. He caught her hand, pressing it flat against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. We've faced worse and survived. Whatever comes, we handle it together. Before she could respond, urgent hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Cade was out of bed and pulling on clothes before the rider could dismount. Mr. Callahan. It was Miguel Santos, one of her students. Come quick, there's trouble in town. They dressed hastily and rode hard for Silver Creek. Main Street was in chaos, a crowd gathered outside the bank. Sheriff Watson trying to maintain order. What happened? Cade demanded. Judge Morrison pushed through the crowd, his face grim. Richard Pemberton happened. He's bought the bank. Evelyn's blood ran cold. What? Arrived this morning with papers proving he now owns majority shares. First thing he did was call in every outstanding loan. The judge's expression was bleak. Half the town owes money to the bank. He's demanding full payment within 48 hours or he'll foreclose. He can't do that, someone protested. We have contracts, which he's claiming are invalid due to irregularities. His lawyers are already filing papers. The judge looked at Evelyn with sympathy. He made his intentions clear. Everyone who helped you, supported you, gave you shelter, they're all targets. The crowd's eyes turned to her. She saw fear, anger, and worst of all, blame. These people had risked everything for her, and now they would lose it all. How much? Cade asked quietly. Total debt. Nearly $30,000. More than the entire town could raise if we pooled everything.
It was a fortune, a death sentence for Silver Creek.
I'll pay it. Everyone turned to stare at Cade.
You can't,
Evelyn whispered.
That's everything you have: the ranch, the cattle, your father's legacy.
None of it matters without you. His jaw was set in that stubborn line she'd come to know well. And I won't let good people suffer for doing right.
Cade.
Banker inside. When the judge nodded, Cade strode toward the door.
Then let's settle this.
The bank's interior was cool and shadowed. Richard sat behind the manager's desk like a king on a throne. He hadn't changed, still perfectly groomed, expensively dressed, with cold eyes that had always reminded her of a snake. Evelyn. He stood with mock courtesy. You look well. Ranch life agrees with you, though you're rather more sun touch than suits a lady. State your business, Pemberton. Cade growled. Richard's gaze flicked dismissively over him. Ah, the cowboy husband. How quaint. He returned his attention to Evelyn. Did you really think you could run from me, that I'd allow my property to be stolen? I was never your property. No, I invested considerable resources in our courtship. Your father accepted my suit. Contracts were signed. Contracts I never agreed to. Irrelevant, though I'm willing to be generous. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Return with me to Philadelphia. Annul this farce of a marriage. I'll forgive the bank debts and leave this dusty little town in peace. Go to hell, Cade said flatly. Richard's expression hardened. I wasn't addressing you, Cowboy, though I suppose I should thank you for keeping her. Entertained. I trust she's learned some interesting skills that will transfer to our marriage bed. Cade moved so fast Richard barely had time to flinch. One moment he was seated. The next, Cade had him by the throat against the wall. You speak of my wife with respect, Cade said, each word precise and deadly. Or I'll forget I'm civilized. Assault, Richard gasped. Sheriff, I demand. Didn't see nothing, Sheriff Watson said mildly from the doorway. Man trips and falls all the time in these parts. Dangerous territory. Cade released him, stepping back. Richard straightened his cravat with shaking hands, but his smirk returned quickly. Barbaric. But then, what else could one expect? He pulled out a sheaf of papers. 48 hours, full payment or foreclosure. Your choice. Evelyn, save your friends or watch them burn. We'll pay, Cade said. With what I've done my research, Mr. Callahan, your ranch is valuable, but not that valuable. Not in cash. Then I'll find it. Richard laughed. From where who'll lend money to fight me, I own interests in every major bank from here to San Francisco. He was right, and they all knew it. This was checkmate, played with ruthless precision. 48 hours, Richard repeated. Though I'm willing to negotiate, Evelyn knows my terms. Outside the bank, the crowd had grown. News traveled fast in a small town. Faces that had smiled at her that morning now held suspicion, fear, resentment. This ain't right, Tom Garrett said loudly. Miss Evelyn ain't to blame for that snake's doings. But others murmured dissent. The Pattersons owed money for their store, the Millers for their farm. Even Reverend Douglas had a loan for church repairs.
I'll fix this,
Evelyn announced, her voice carrying, No one will lose their homes because of me. How? Someone called out. She looked at Cade, seeing her own determination reflected in his eyes. We'll find a way. Back at the ranch, they gathered their allies, Bill Hawkins, Rosa and Juan, Tom Garrett, and, surprisingly, Mrs. Blackwood. That pompous peacock thinks he can buy our town, Mrs. Blackwood sniffed. I think not. You don't owe the bank money, Bill pointed out.
No, but I owe Miss Evelyn, Mrs. Callahan, an apology worth more than money. Besides, I didn't survive 40 years in this territory by letting Eastern dandies push us around.
They spent hours going over options. Cade could raise perhaps $10,000 by selling everything. Others could contribute smaller amounts. But it wasn't enough.
There might be another way,
Tom said slowly. The old Dutchman's mine. Everyone fell silent. The Dutchman's mine was legend. A gold strike hidden somewhere in the Superstition Mountains, found and lost a dozen times over the years.
That's a fairy tale,
Bill protested. Maybe, but my grandfather knew the Dutchman, swore the gold was real, even drew a map. Tom pulled out a yellowed piece of paper. Course, plenty of men have died looking. It's our only chance, Evelyn said.
How long would it take?
If the map's accurate, day to ride there, day to search, day back, cutting it close. Then we leave at dawn. Cade decided. We, Evelyn raised an eyebrow.
I'm coming with you.
Like hell.
Like hell I'm not. This is my fight. Cade Callahan, you married me for better or worse. This is the worst part.
They stared at each other, wills clashing. Finally, he sighed.
You'll be the death of me, woman.
But what a way to go, she replied sweetly. That night, as they prepared for the journey, Evelyn found a moment alone with Rosa in the kitchen. You think we're fools, she said. It wasn't a question. I think you're desperate. Rosa replied, but sometimes desperate people find miracles. She handed Evelyn a wrapped package. Food for the journey, and this. Inside was a small silver cross on a chain.
This was Sarah's. She wore it always, for protection.
Tears pricked Evelyn's eyes.
Rosa, I can't.
You can and you will. She would want. Rosa paused, choosing words carefully. She would want Cade happy. He is happy with you, so you wear this and you come back safe. Sip. They set out before dawn. Cade, Evelyn, Bill, and Tom. The Superstition Mountains loomed like sleeping giants against the lightning sky, all twisted rock and hidden dangers. Stay close, Cade instructed as they entered a narrow canyon. These mountains don't forgive mistakes. The map led them through a maze of arroyos and hidden valleys. By noon, the heat was oppressive, the rocks radiating warmth like ovens. They found the Dutchman's markers, a skull-shaped rock, 3 saguaros in a row, a spring that ran red with iron. Should be just ahead, Tom said, consulting the map. Cave entrance behind a fall of rocks. They found it as the sun peeked a narrow opening barely visible behind tumbled boulders. The air that seeped out was cool and dusty, carrying a hint of something else, something metallic. Gold has a smell, Bill breathed.
By God, it might be real.
The cave was treacherous, requiring ropes and careful climbing. But 20 feet in, Cade's torch illuminated a sight that stole their breath. Gold, veins of it running through the quartz walls, chunks of it scattered on the floor. A fortune beyond imagining. The Dutchman was no liar, Tom whispered. They worked frantically, filling saddlebags with the richest ore. It was dangerous work. The cave was unstable, rocks shifting ominously, but necessity drove them on. That's enough, Cade finally called. Any more and we'll collapse the horses. As they emerged, blinking in the afternoon light, Evelyn felt a mix of elation and exhaustion. They'd done it. They'd actually... Well, what have we here? Her heart sank. Richard stood at the cave entrance with 6 armed men, all pointing rifles at them. Did you really think I wouldn't have you followed? He smiled coldly. My dear Evelyn, you continue to underestimate me. This gold belongs to whoever finds it. Cade said, that's territorial law. Perhaps, but dead men can't claim ownership. Richard nodded to his men.
Kill the others. Bring her.
Time slowed. Evelyn saw Cade's hand move for his gun, saw Richard's men tighten their fingers on triggers, saw death approaching on swift wings. Then she remembered the derringer Cade had given her, small and hidden in her boot. The gunfight was brief and vicious. Evelyn's shot took Richard in the knee, dropping him screaming. Cade and Bill's gun spoke in deadly harmony. Tom, wounded but game, managed to wing 2 men before they fled. When the smoke cleared, 3 of Richard's men lay dead. The others had vanished into the rocks, leaving their employer writhing in the dirt. "My knee," Richard gasped. "You've crippled me." "You'll live," Evelyn said coldly. "Which is more than you planned for us." Cade hauled him upright, none too gently. "You're going to write a letter, transferring the bank back to local ownership, canceling all debts." "Never." "Then we leave you here for the buzzards." Cade's smile was terrible. "Your choice." Faced with abandonment in the wilderness with a shattered knee, Richard capitulated, with shaking hands. He wrote the documents Tom dictated, signing away his power over Silver Creek. "There," he spat. "Take your worthless town. But this isn't over. You'll go back east," Evelyn interrupted. "You'll tell everyone I died of fever or snakebite or whatever preserves your precious pride. You'll marry some other poor girl whose father needs your money. And you'll forget I ever existed. You think you've won, you think this cowboy can make you happy, you'll regret." She slapped him, putting all her anger and fear and disgust into it. "The only thing I regret is the years I wasted being polite to you." They left him there with water and his wounded men, knowing they'd survive but hoping the experience might teach humility. Probably not. But a woman could dream. The ride back was hard. Tom's wound needed tending, and they pushed the horses to their limits, but they made it with hours to spare, riding into Silver Creek like conquering heroes. The gold was assayed and converted to cash, more than enough to pay all debts with plenty left for the town's future. The bank was reorganized under local control. Richard Pemberton, last anyone heard, had limped back to Philadelphia with a permanent limp and a story about a hunting accident. That night, as the town celebrated, Evelyn and Cade slipped away to their favorite spot by the creek. "We did it," she marveled. "We actually did it." "You did it," he corrected. "That shot saved us all." "I had a good teacher." She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "Think he'll come back?" "No, men like him are cowards at heart. He'll find easier prey." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the vast desert sky. The crisis had passed, but Evelyn knew more challenges would come. The school to build, the ranch to run, a life to create together in this harsh, beautiful land. "Any regrets?" Cade asked, echoing her question from their wedding night. She thought of Philadelphia's comfortable cages, of the life she'd fled. Then she looked at her husband, this complex, difficult, wonderful man who'd chosen her above everything. "Only one," she said. He tensed. "Well, what?" "That it took me so long to find you." He laughed, pulling her closer. "Worth the wait, Mrs. Callahan, worth every minute." As they walked home, hand in hand, Evelyn touched the silver cross at her throat. "Thank you, Sarah," she thought, "for loving him first, for making him the man who could love again." The desert wind sang its ancient song, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate. The sound no longer seemed lonely to Evelyn. It sounded like home. 6 months later, the Arizona sun blessed the dedication of the Callahan School with perfect weather. The new building stood proud on the ranch grounds, 2 stories of adobe and timber, with real glass windows and a bell tower that could be heard across the valley. "I still can't believe it's real," Evelyn whispered to Cade as they watched families arrive from across the territory. "You dreamed it. You built it," he replied, his arm warm around her waist. though I think you've bitten off more than you can chew with 40 students.
43, she corrected with a grin.
3 more enrolled yesterday. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Reverend Douglas blessed the building while students from her original class performed recitations. Annie Patterson, now her teaching assistant, helped manage the younger children with newfound confidence.
This school,
Evelyn addressed the gathered crowd,
represents more than education. It represents community, hope, and the belief that knowledge can transform lives. Every child, regardless of background or circumstance, deserves the chance to learn and grow.
Applause echoed across the desert, but Evelyn noticed Cade's hand move protectively to her still flat stomach. Only he, Rosa, and Doc Winters knew their secret, the new life growing within her, conceived during those desperate days after Richard's defeat. As if summoned by her thoughts, Rosa appeared at her elbow.
You should rest. Mia, the little one needs...
I'm fine. Rosa, strong as a desert wildflower. Remember, but even wildflowers need water and shade. The celebration continued into the evening. Tables groaned under the weight of food donated by grateful families. Musicians played, couples danced, and children ran wild with joy. Evelyn found a quiet moment with Martha Garrett, who'd become like a second mother to her.
Sarah would be so proud,
Martha said softly. This school, the way you've brought the community together, it's what she always dreamed of.
I hope so.
Sometimes I feel her presence here, watching over us.
Love doesn't die,
Martha said simply.
It just changes form,
like how Cade's love for her made him the man who could love you. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Evelyn noticed a lone rider approaching. Her hand went instinctively to where her gun would be, old habits dying hard. But as the figure drew closer, she relaxed. It was a woman, elderly but riding with practiced ease, leading a pack mule loaded with supplies. Cade tensed beside her.
Can't be,
The woman dismounted at the school's entrance, her weathered face breaking into a smile.
Hello, grandson.
Grandmother, Cade's voice cracked slightly.
We thought you were...
Dead takes more than rumors to kill an old bird like me. She turned sharp eyes on Evelyn. So you're the one who finally thawed his frozen heart. Evelyn stepped forward, extending her hand.
Evelyn Callahan, it's an honor to meet you. Mrs.
Just call me Agnes. Been living with the Apache these past 10 years, learning their medicine ways. Heard about the school from traders. She studied Evelyn intently. Also heard my grandson found himself a fighter. That true? When necessary, Evelyn replied. Agnes laughed, a sound like wind through canyon walls. Good. Callahan men need strong women, else they turn into stubborn old mules. She poked Cade with her walking stick. Speaking of which, you planning to tell me about my great-grandchild? Or do I have to read the signs myself? Evelyn's eyes widened. How did you... Apache medicine women know these things. Plus, you keep touching your belly when you think no one's looking. The reunion was joyful, if complicated. Agnes had left after Sarah's death, unable to bear the memories. She'd found peace among the Apache, learning their healing arts. But family had finally called her home. I can teach at your school, she offered. Traditional medicine, desert survival, the old ways. Children should know more than just books. That would be wonderful. Evelyn agreed, already imagining the possibilities. As the celebration wound down and guests departed, the Callahan family expanded, now gathered on the porch. The new school stood silhouetted against the stars, a monument to dreams made real. I have something for you, Agnes told Evelyn, producing a leather pouch, Apache blessing bundle, for protection during childbirth and after. Evelyn accepted the gift reverently.
Thank you.
No, child, thank you for bringing my grandson back to life. Agnes's eyes misted. I ran from my grief. You faced yours and transformed it.
That takes real courage. Later, in the quiet of their bedroom, Cade held Evelyn close. His hand splayed protective over her stomach. "Today was perfect," she murmured. "You're perfect." He kissed her forehead. "Have I told you lately that I love you?" "Only a dozen times today." "Not nearly enough then." She turned in his arms to face him. "Cade, are you happy?" "Truly happy. I know the school takes me away from ranch work. And with the baby coming," he silenced her with a kiss. "Evelyn Callahan, you've given me more than I ever dreamed possible. A reason to wake up smiling. A future worth building. A family worth protecting. If that's not happiness, I don't know what is. Even when I'm being stubborn and reckless. Especially then, wouldn't have you any other way." They lay in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds distant coyotes, the wind through mesquite, the creak of the new building settling. "Do you think Richard will ever truly let go?" Evelyn asked. "Got a letter from my lawyer friend in Tucson. Pemberton's engaged to some banker's daughter in Boston. Seems he's moved on to easier prey." "I almost feel sorry for her." "Don't. Save your sympathy for those who deserve it." He pulled her closer. "Besides, you've got more important things to think about. Like what we're naming this little one." "Sarah, if it's a girl," Evelyn said without hesitation. "She should be remembered." Cade's arms tightened around her. "And if it's a boy?" "Thomas, after my father, despite everything, he taught me to be strong, just in ways he never intended." The months passed in a blur of growth and change. The school thrived, drawing students from as far as Tucson. Agnes proved a powerful addition, teaching practical skills alongside traditional academics. The ranch prospered too, with new wells dug using the remaining gold money. Evelyn's pregnancy progressed smoothly, though she scandalized proper society by teaching until her 8th month. Even then, she continued planning lessons from bed rest, driving Cade to fond exasperation. "You're supposed to be relaxing," he'd scold, finding her surrounded by books and papers. "I am relaxing. This is relaxing for me." "Woman, you don't know the meaning of the word." The baby came with the spring rains early, eager and loud. Sarah Rose Callahan entered the world during a thunderstorm, her cries competing with the thunder. "She's perfect," Cade whispered, cradling his daughter with infinite tenderness. "Look at those eyes, just like her mother's." "And that stubborn chin is all Callahan," Evelyn replied weakly, exhausted but euphoric. Agnes, who delivered the baby with skill learned from Apache midwives, smiled. "She'll be a fighter. This one, born in storm and struggle, it makes them strong." As if in agreement, little Sarah gripped her father's finger with surprising strength. The dedication of their daughter brought the community together once more. Even Mrs. Blackwood, now one of Evelyn's staunchest supporters, cooed over the baby. "To think," she said, "a year ago I nearly drove you away with my foolish prejudice. Thank the Lord you're more forgiving than I deserve." "We all have our journeys," Evelyn replied graciously. "What matters is where we end up." Standing in the schoolyard, surrounded by friends who'd become family, holding her daughter while her husband's arm encircled them both, Evelyn marveled at the path that had brought her here. She'd fled a cage and found freedom, sought safety and discovered courage, ran from false love and stumbled into true partnership. "Penny for your thoughts," Cade murmured. Just thinking about choices. How one decision climbing out that window in Philadelphia led to all this. "Best night of my life," he said, "when that dust storm brought you to my door." Even with all the trouble that followed, especially with all the trouble, made me remember I was alive, made me remember love was worth fighting for. Little Sarah gurgled, as if adding her agreement. "I love you," Evelyn said simply. "Both of you, all of this, even the hard parts." "Especially the hard parts," he echoed with a grin. "They're what make the good parts shine." As the sun set over their desert kingdom, painting the rocks in shades of fire,
Evelyn knew he was right. Every challenge had been worth it. Every battle had led them here to this moment. This family, this life built on choice and courage and love. The desert wind sang its evening song. And somewhere in the Superstition Mountains, legend said the Dutchman's ghost still guarded hidden gold. But Evelyn had found treasures far more valuable than metal, a home, a purpose, a love that had chosen her as fiercely as she'd chosen it.
"Touch me there,"
she whispered, guiding Cade's hand to rest over her heart. "Where you've made me whole." He smiled, understanding flowing between them without need for words. "Forever," he promised. "I choose you forever." And in the vast Arizona night, under stars that had witnessed countless loves and losses, the Callahan family stood together, proof that sometimes running away leads you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes the greatest courage is letting yourself be caught. Sometimes the wildest hearts make the strongest homes. And always, always, love finds a way to bloom even in the desert, especially in the storm. Forever in the choice to say yes to all of it. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Evelyn and Cade's journey through the dusty trails of Arizona territory. Where are you listening from? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to know if you're enjoying this from a bustling city, or perhaps somewhere in the countryside. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Night for more passionate tales from the American frontier. Give this video a like if it touched your heart, and please hit that hype button to help more listeners discover these stories of courage and romance. Until next time, partners.